we are going to start recording those now. So again, if you don't want your comments, if you didn't want to unmute and ask anything because we're recording, you can always email us. You can put things in chat, as we've said, or if you want to save your questions and give us a call, not this evening, but in sort of working hours moving forward, you can always do that as well. So welcome and introduction. Although a large part of this session is given over to the funding consultation, of course, we always start with our quality under our early years foundation stage umbrella, because, you know, in spite of all of this, all of the changes that are coming our way, you are fabulous at always putting the child at the centre. So we always have some kind of focus on quality and on that provision underneath our EYFS and underneath those important commitments of unique child, positive relationships, enabling environments that allows that learning and development to happen. And of course, a lot of our work particularly focuses on vulnerable children and children who are vulnerable to poor outcomes. So we're going to be touching on the changes to the EYFS, giving a brief update on the early years strategy. As part of that, we're going to be asking some questions around the poetry basket and the anti-racism statement that we'd be really grateful if you would respond to just quickly on the session when we ask those questions. We've got Sarah Evans with us this evening, who's going to be running through some of the changes to the nurture pack and some updates on SEND, and then over to Emma and Karen Jarvis for the funding consultation.
Oh, she's gone mute again.
I'm not pressing anything, I promise you. I don't know why that keeps happening. So changes to the early years foundation stage. Some changes are applicable to both childminders and group settings, and some are just for either childminders or groups. So we've got a mixed group this evening, so we are going to be going through both of these. We know that you've seen the changes. We've sent out various links to them, but as we're all together as a group, we just thought it's worth going through these in a little more detail just to ensure that everybody's aware of these changes. So for both childminders and group settings, we need to ensure the safeguarding policies and procedures as to setting include all electronic devices with imaging and sharing capabilities, not just mobile phones and cameras. So that's all smart devices, including smart watches. And there's also a comment around working with children with English as an additional language, where settings may provide opportunities for children to develop and use their home language in play and learning. Previously, this requirement stated this must be done rather than may be done. But after feedback from a lot of settings and a lot of parents who didn't want their child to necessarily have opportunities with their home language, that's the emphasis on that word has changed. Language has also been changed to clarify that physical evidence does not need to be collected for assessments. It's very much on the focus through Ofsted inspections, etc., that it's the interactions that matter and the key person's knowledge of where a child is. We know that that's down to a set in individual settings, because a number of places with the retention and recruitment difficulties at the moment perhaps use agency staff, etc. So you just need to make sure that within your own setting you are clear. If you don't have consistent key people, you have perhaps key people buddies, etc. But you just need to know that you're not required to produce that physical evidence in sort of backing up that move away from excessive paperwork. Specifically for childminders, and I know we have a lot of childminders with us this evening. It's wonderful that we've got so many of you here. You'll no longer be required to complete training on the earliest foundation stage prior to registration. However, childminders will still need to demonstrate they have the required knowledge of the EYFS at their pre-registration visits. We know we've had some feedback from the sector that they're a little disappointed that some of it seems to be deprofessionalising the childminding sector. We are adamant that is not going to happen. You know, we've always held our childminders in high esteem as equal partners under the EYFS, and that will continue to be the case. Where judged appropriate by a childminding assistants can now fulfil the role of a key person for children. So hopefully that will support your practice. And with the enabling environment aspect, childminders with open planned kitchen living areas can now utilise safely usable areas within this room for their provision. And childminders may provide opportunities for children to develop and use their home language in play, as we already mentioned on the previous slide, for children with English as an additional language. The requirement for childminders to display a paediatric first aid certificate has been removed, and instead these are just available on request. And the same with the physical copy of the certificate of registration. There's no longer a requirement for that to be openly displayed, just the digital version can be used. So that's now clarified through those changes. Again, applicable to childminders, the early learning goals have been moved from the childminders EYFS statutory guidance to statutory document to an annex, as childminders do not usually need to use these, so they were just cluttering up that statutory guidance. And the section on assessment in the childminder framework has been significantly amended, including removing information on the reception baseline, again, which childminders didn't undertake, so it made no sense it being in there. The wording has changed on suitable person to clarify it's the responsibility of the childminder agency or Ofsted to carry out suitability checks on behalf of the childminder. And the wording has been changed on confidential areas. So rather than having a permanent area available to be able to have discussions with parents or other professionals, a suitable area is made available on request, which again makes much more sense if you're, obviously operating out of a home environment. Changes for group settings, and a lot of this sits around qualifications. And I will just say that a reminder that Rhiannon Richards within our team, our Workforce Development Officer, is a real sort of expert on qualifications. So if there's anything that you're scratching your head about or you're not you're not clear about within your particular setting, please always email Rhi or give her a call, and she will always talk through your specific requirements or queries around qualifications. But under the EYFS now, ensure setting managers appointed on or after the 4th of January 24 hold a level 2 maths qualification, or that they achieve one within 2 years of starting the position. There's now a need to ensure that all level 2 and level 3 staff members hold a valid paediatric first aid certificate, otherwise they can't be included in ratio. And level 3 practitioners in group and school-based settings will no longer be required to hold a level 2 maths qualification to count within staff-child ratios. We know we've sent out a lot of this information, and we will also be sending out these slides as soon as we've marked the register, so you will have this if you need it to check back. A manager in group and school-based settings can now allow students and apprentices to count in staff-child ratios at the level below their level of study if the manager is satisfied that they're competent and responsible. So again, that's really sent back to you to be able to articulate why you feel that student, you've deemed them to be responsible enough to be acting in those ratios. So you just need to be clear in your own head, so that you could articulate it to anybody if you were challenged around that decision. There is a new statutory document on early years qualification requirements and standards, and as I mentioned, if you find yourself struggling with that a little bit because there are a variety of qualifications out there, do call Rhi. Rhi's already taken a number of calls around this, so please do call her. Because there'll be varying needs across settings. And a clarification has been made that while qualifications must be verified, employees do not have to provide physical copies of their qualifications. Again, from various feedback, people couldn't necessarily lay their hands on it, so you don't need to have that physical copy. And a clarification has been made on the wording of the validity of paediatric first aid certificates. So some changes, but not huge life-shattering changes, but that split between the childminders and the groups. When we looked at it in detail, we said actually not a huge amount has changed. So we don't really need huge alarm bells around that. Moving on to our early years strategy, we had a soft launch at this for those of you who came to the provider briefings in the autumn term. We're really pleased that we've managed to pull this together, working really closely with colleagues in safeguarding across SEND and across our health areas within North Somerset. Everybody's really collaborated to pull together this supporting a child's journey in those crucial ages 0 to 5 in North Somerset. So there have been, we shared it last time, and there's been a couple of changes. One of the ones that we want to draw your attention to is because this wording is going to be used a lot, is the 1001 days and beyond. So it's a relatively new government policy that's been adopted, although there's nothing new in there. If we read in the middle of this document, the UNICEF statement, it's really just reiterating the huge importance of this period from pregnancy to age 3, when children are most susceptible to environmental influences, and investing in this period is one of the most efficient and effective ways to help eliminate extreme poverty and inequality. So really strengthening the gravitas of the work that you do, which I know sometimes you do not feel is really, really rewarded with the remuneration it deserves. But with this kind of policy in place and being adopted at governmental level, it gives us more leverage moving forward to get more and more focus on this, as I say, on the gravitas of the work that you're doing. It seems to be coming perhaps the wrong way around, that there's the expansion offer before this huge investment in the workforce, but we're confident that with this these policies being adopted and this real focus on the importance of these early years, that will come. Eternally optimistic. Within the early years strategy, we've also added in an additional focus area. The focus areas we shared before were around Poetry Basket, and if you remember, our ambition is to have every single setting in North Somerset working under the EYFS engaging in the Poetry Basket project, so that all children have exposure to those 12 core poems, one a month, before they enter any reception class in North Somerset. It's a wonderful transition project, so that if you can imagine, if a number of children from a number of feeder preschools and childminders come together in one reception class, how wonderful if they've all got that commonality of language. And of course, within the Poetry Basket, there's also enriched vocabulary and all that, the wonderful development opportunities that come through rhythm, rhyme, and the fun of sharing poetry together. So we really do urge everybody to be engaging in that if they can. We share them through the newsletters regularly, and of course Mandy Jennings from Portage has also now completed the 12 Macathon videos that go alongside the 12 poems, and there are always links to those in the newsletter as well. If for any reason you haven't received those, or you haven't got access to the recent newsletter, you can always drop me an email and we can send out the links to the 12 poems and to the Macathon videos as well. An additional reminder here, we mentioned at the beginning that one of our huge duties within our under the EYFS, and of course as part of the early years strategy in North Somerset, is to narrow that gap and to support children who are vulnerable or at risk of poor outcomes to achieve the best that they can. And as part of the Poetry Basket, we've said all children in receipt of early years pupil premium can be gifted a printed copy of the 12 poems, so that it can come backwards and forwards to home and enhance that home learning environment by encouraging parents and carers to be doing those poems, perhaps even more with those children. So if you haven't received or collected your copies of the Poetry Basket poems for your children in receipt of EYPP, you can either go to the World of Step and Story on the Winterstoke Road, where there are several batches already made up for you, or again you can contact our team and we'll try and get those poems out to you for your children in receipt of early years pupil premium. Helicopter Stories is an ongoing project in some settings in North Somerset, so we'll continue to feedback the success around that as we're learning from it across the 3 years of the strategy, and the same with Tots Talking. The speech and language toolkit we shared at the last provider briefings, and again it's our ambition that everybody is familiar with that, and we're going to be sharing a couple of slides a little later on around some additional support that is out there from our speech and language therapists. The focus area that we've added in is the Brilliant Babies Network, which is now in its second year, focusing on offering support to our practitioners and our educators working with our youngest children. So if that's you, and particularly with our childminding sector, obviously we often work with our babies, and you haven't yet accessed the Brilliant Babies Network, we do urge you to join, to look at that network online. And we're also working with the Stronger Practice Hubs to offer further CPD specifically for that age group, because we feel that age group has been neglected a little, and particularly with the expansion offer, we need to have more of a focus on those early years, those crucial early years, and that brain development. So the early years strategy is now live. It has gone through various checks and has now been sort of signed off. So when we send out this PowerPoint, you can click on the link there if you want to read it in its entirety, or you just want to, run your eyes over it. The actual document itself, of course, a lot of work's gone into it, but it's actually the work within that that's the important part. So two bits of the work within the strategy are our anti-racism strategy and, as I've already mentioned, the poetry basket. Now, you'll be aware that because we are sending out a number of questionnaires around sufficiency at the moment because of the expansion offer and with the funding consultation, we did not want to bombard you with too many questionnaires. So we have actually held back on our safeguarding audit and our annual conversation this year. They will be released later in the year. But we wanted to give you an opportunity to be completing the funding and the sufficiency audits, which are so crucial at this period in time. Because of that, we are missing collecting some baseline evidence for our strategy against how you are engaging with some of these pieces of work. And we are committed to anti-racism as an early years sector, as we are as a wider North Somerset Council. So we have we've got an ambition within the strategy that every early years setting, childminders, group settings alike, will feel confident enough to display this anti-racism statement, that in North Somerset we celebrate diversity, promote inclusion and challenge racism and all forms of prejudice. We want every child to grow up to do the same. So we'd like to ask you now, I think Liz Owen is just going to pop a poll in the chat. If you would be kind enough to let us know if either yes, you are displaying that statement, or no, you're not, just so we've got a sort of baseline as to how broadly this is being shared. If for any reason you can't access the poll, if you can put in the chat ARS yes if you're displaying the anti-racism statement, or ARS no if you're not displaying the statement. That will just give us that, as I say, that baseline information either through the poll or through the chat. So either click on the poll, yes or no, or write in the chat ARS yes or ARS no. And we'll just give you a couple of minutes to be completing that. And then Liz, if you'll be kind enough to tell me when it looks as though people have, that little flurry of activity has stopped.
We've got about 17 responses in the poll and people are still writing in the chat, Gail.
Wonderful, thank you. Just a really useful piece of information, and like I say, a wonderful opportunity because we've had so many people attending the two sessions this morning and this evening, so we do really appreciate your feedback. And then we know how little or how much work we need to do to continue to promote this. Because as I say, in the strategy, we said at the end of the 3 years, it's our ambition that everybody feels confident enough in their practice to be displaying this statement. Okay. I think that's mainly stopped, Liz.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And there's just one more of these. I've mentioned the poetry basket again. We are really pushing this. We just think it's such it's such a fun project, and it's such an easy way to be incorporating so much of the EYFS, so much of the Ofsted requirements around enriched vocabulary. We've actually had it mentioned specifically in a couple of Ofsted reports now, which is remarkable because usually Ofsted aren't supposed to name specific schemes, but it's been really easy to identify that they actually are talking about Poetry Basket. So it really is a win-win all round. It's the only commitment for you is to be learning or looking at learning a poem a month with your children, of course in line with lots of other things that you'll be doing around communication, language and literacy, but it's just that communal aspect that can make this such a powerful project if everybody is learning it. And we're sharing it with our colleagues across the council. As a team, Sarah Evans comes to each of our team meetings and teaches us the Makaton for each of the poems. We've had wonderful feedback, for example, Wendy Packer, who's our inclusion lead, her granddaughter is learning these poems within her early years setting. So we really are trying to get counsellors to learn them, and everybody, so there is that commonality of language and commonality of experience. So we would really love to know, again, Liz is putting up another poll, if you are using these poems regularly as part of your practice and joining in with that ambition of trying to ensure that all of your children have experience of, even if they haven't learnt them off by heart, by the time they go into reception. Again, if you can either click on the poll or if you can write PB for Poetry Basket, yes, PB, no in the chat. So either the poll or in the chat, again, to give us that baseline so that we've got that to measure the impact over the next 3 years. So we'll give you a minute or so to do that. And then if Liz can let me know, we'll then move on.
Hi, Gail. Sorry, I can't see any of the chat or the poll. What am I doing wrong, please?
I'm not entirely sure. Do you know if you've got the chat function? Do you normally have the chat function on your device?
Yeah, and it's given me the option, but I'm putting things in there and I don't think anyone's seeing it, and I can't see anyone else's comments.
Oh,
no, I can't
annoying.
either. I can't see the poll or the same. I can't do anything.
Same here.
Same here.
Sarah, we can see what
Same
you've
here.
written.
Oh, can you? Oh, okay. Oh, that's fine then.
Same
I'll
here.
shut up then.
I think it depends on the device that you are using, apparently, which is why Gail has said about the chat, but that's not much help if you can't see the chat either, unfortunately.
No problems. I was just thinking of you guys, if you can't see, if there's lots of people that can't comment, then that's obviously, I think it's just that maybe people can't comment rather than they're not commenting.
I mean, I will ask you an additional favour in that case. I know that you're such busy people, but if you haven't been able to let us know about either the anti-racism statement or the poetry basket, if you would be kind enough to drop me an email, just letting me know as a setting, but it just really helps for that little bit of data that gives us a kind of baseline as to where we are with it. If you can't, I understand, but if you can, it would be greatly appreciated.
No probs, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all so much. I'm now going to pass over to Sarah Evans, who's going to go through some of the changes to and the importance of the Nurture Pack. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, I'm not sure if Sarah's there. If you are, I think you might be on mute, Sarah.
Good evening, everybody.
There you are.
Back in March 2023, Sarah Long and myself relaunched the Nurture Pack to include the 4 A's. It's a wellbeing toolkit for all early years settings. Thank you, Gail. So the Nurture Pack rationale helps identify when a child appears to have some difficulties with social and emotional development. These difficulties can often lead to high anxiety that can have a negative impact on learning. The materials in the Nurture Pack are designed to support provision and progress in these cases and to ensure maximum parental involvement and partnership working. It can also have an impact on all children in the setting, as you'll see as we go through. Nurture Pack oh, thank you, Gail.
Sorry,
that's
okay.
So sorry. Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. So educators are still required to complete the identified sections of children's emotional needs. And then from those sections, they map their concerns onto a nurture star. The nurture star supports us to work with parents to map the levels of the well-being of a child. And it's really important to do at least 3 rounds. Quite often what we see is you will mark your first round and then your second round may potentially get bigger. Because sometimes when you put strategies in place, children need time to settle and readjust to those strategies. Hence why it's important to do at least 3 rounds. We put the coloured markings, so red, green and blue, and then the lines correspond to that. What I've been suggesting to settings when I come in is your identified need sheet. If you date it and write in the corresponding colour, you can just update that sheet as well. You don't have to keep doing new sheets. And the same with the 4As when we move on to that. If you write it all in the corresponding colour of each line, then it will run in sync. It helps us to monitor and celebrate progress and highlight where additional support is needed. So sometimes you might have an area that you can take away and you might need to put a different area in. So it just helps us to keep that monitored. Thank you, Gail. The nurture pack should be used in place of an IPP to support children's social and emotional development. So if you're looking at top-up funding and you're looking at a category C, you will not need an IPP as well, because your 4As will be your strategies and potentially your targets that you will work on. However, if you have got another professional working with that child, for example, speech and language therapist, a portage practitioner, physiotherapist, you're going to need an IPP as well, because you will need to cross-reference their targets onto your IPP. The Nurture Pack will enable educators to focus on providing a physically and emotionally rich environment that will help them to develop strategies to support and monitor the well-being of individual children when necessary. Thank you, Gail. The 4As is the setting plan. That demonstrates what you, as adults, have recognised there is a need and what you plan to do as educators to support the child. It's a whole setting approach. It's not just the responsibility of one person. What we recommend is that you introduce it maybe as part of your team meeting, and then you will all adopt the 4 areas and the strategies you have put into place. Hence, it possibly will help other children in your setting as well as the child that you might have concerns about. So the 4 areas are anxiety. So what strategies are you putting into place to support the child's anxiety? Attention. What strategies are you putting in place to meet the child's need for attention, or that child's need to make connections is a word we're using now, rather than attention seeking. So we're being very positive. That child's needing to make connections for a reason. Adults, who are the child's key adults and how are they supporting the child and how are you supporting them? And area, what are you including in your environment so that the child feels safe and secure? Thank you, Gail. On the 17th of April, we have a Nurture Pack workshop. We've got 2 sessions from 9:30 to 11:30 in the morning, 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening. You only need to attend one, but you can bring one child in mind, and we will support you to write that document there and then so you can take it away and use it in your settings. Thank you, Gail. Okay, the other changes we are making is after we've had a pilot, a very successful pilot, we're changing the online inclusion support referral forms. So after discussing your plans to apply for inclusion support, complete the early years provider comment section of the parent carer contribution form, request for inclusion support, and then pass it on to the parent carer. And these are all hyperlinked. So once you get this PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on that. It's all available on the workforce development pages. The workforce development pages, if you get into the habit of going to them every time you need a document, you will then have the latest up-to-date documents, because we appreciate they're changing very rapidly. So you click on this form and you fill in your section, and then you pass it on to the parents and carers for their contribution. You can either do that electronically or by giving them a hard copy. Please draw the parent and carer's attention to the information about the early years inclusion support privacy notice statement when the form is returned. Check they've ticked the confirmation box and signed the form. If it's been sent back to you by email, then you're going to need to print off a copy and get them to sign it. Once that form is signed, you must keep it in your child's records, okay? We don't need to see a copy of it. We trust that you've done that section. Thank you, Gail. Then you need to transfer your parent carer's comments onto the online inclusion form. Again, when you click on that link, it will take you straight through to the form. If parents have typed onto your electronic copy, you can copy and paste that straight onto the form. After submitting the form, you should receive a confirmation email with an option to download a copy of the information. Once we receive at our end, we will also send you an email to say we've received it. Okay, because of the success of our pilot for the inclusion support referral form, we are also going to have an electronic version for the Maisie form. So the Maisie form will also be coming out now as an electronic version. Between now and the 1st of April, you have an option to use both types, whichever one you prefer. After the 1st of April, it will only be electronic versions that will be available. Okay, it's trial period. If you get stuck, if you need help, please, please, please do get in touch and we can talk it through step by step, take you through. But it's fairly straightforward, and all these instructions are on the workforce pages as well. And they will be coming out in the newsletter. Thank you, Gail.
Thanks, Sarah. I've just, these next couple of slides, I'm not going to read them out. These are just being kept over from the last provider briefings, just as a reminder of the telephone advice line for speech and language therapists. We know that those waiting lists for referring children in for speech and language therapy is very long, or are very long, I should say. The speech and language therapy therapists are very conscious of this, and we know that early intervention is really key. So there is now this telephone advice line, which is running every Wednesday morning. So it's just a reminder of that. And also a reminder of making the direct referral to early years speech and language. So the referral criteria is there, and alongside related documents. So I'm just re-putting those slides in, and of course they'll be sent out with the PowerPoint. Just a reminder before we move on to funding that you have got an additional layer of a voice for yourselves as our early years sector in North Somerset. We felt that this was a gap, and we've now filled that gap. So this provider reference group was re-established in September. That group has now met twice, one for our initial meeting, and then they were pulled together in January as a consultation group for the funding, and they've already helped. Their feedback on your behalf has started to shape that the funding consultation that came out. So it's just a reminder that these are additional people who are championing champions for you, if you either feel that we're not responding effectively enough, or if you just want to have a talk with a peer around some of the difficulties you're experiencing. They can listen to you. They can either save up you know, a number of comments and bring them to the meeting, or if there's something specifically that they need to draw our attention to, they can be that additional layer of support for you. So please do, when you get these you know, these slides through, just make sure you've got a note of your contacts within this group. Okay, and I'm now going to pass over to Emma, and I know Karen's here for I believe Karen's here anyway. I know Karen had some parenting duties, but I think Karen's back with us. So Emma's going to lead this. Hi Karen. Emma's leading this around the consultation on early years funding arrangements. So thank you very much, Emma.
Brilliant, thank you, Gail. As Gail's introduced me, could we please move to the next slide? Okay, so a number of yourselves and across social media and nationally and the government, and it's been in the news again today, around rates, etc. for next year. One of the key questions is, why are we consulting? So yesterday, for example, I think the Gloucestershire rates were published on social media with a number of options, and some people are saying, why doesn't the local authority decide for us? Why, and then others are saying, well, actually we should have a choice. So in fact, that's why we're consulting. So our consultation has been slimmed down, believe it or not, even though it is 50 pages apparently in length, to make yourselves able to have some influence on how money is allocated to providers from April the 1st this year. It's one of the biggest changes that we've seen for early years for a long time, since the extension to hours came in for 3 and 4 year olds about 4 or 5 years ago now, and therefore it's important that we get this as right as we can. So everything I refer to in the consultation, so if there's a table number, sorry, this evening, if there's a table number, then it reflects the table number in the consultation document. So hopefully that will make it easier for yourselves to take the notes and to take the slides and relate that to the consultation itself that's available via the link, but you've also should have received the email. So one of the first things that's changed, of course, is the first change to entitlement will be from April the 1st in relation to working parents of 2-year-olds. So there may well be a number of parents and carers that are entitled to some funded childcare from the 1st of April. And then from September, that gets extended to children aged 9 months to 2 years, again for working parents. Now, I know that there is some questions around codes. So codes are available currently for the 2-year-olds. So some parents are getting hold of the code. The code does not start though, so it might have today's date on it if they've applied today, but the code will not start until the 1st of April. So it works in the same way as 3 and 4 year old extended hours. So hopefully that makes it simpler to understand. So in relation to code, if you've been given a code by a parent, it does not start until the 1st of April. It's always good to encourage them to get their codes in advance, too far in advance, and they have to renew that code potentially before they have to use it, particularly in that summer term between April and September. But it's always best to be ready.
Question about the codes, please.
Yes, of course you can.
I've got a parent that queried with us only yesterday actually. So they fall under the umbrella of the tax credits, and they have to like basically renew their details every 3 months, and they did this in December, so they can't renew it again till March, but they have been told that the deadline for getting these codes is the end of February.
Don't believe that is correct. So the code, they should be able to get a code right up until the 31st of March. So
she should be okay then, yeah?
They should be okay if they've got any doubts. So if the beginning of March, for example, they're not able to get a code and they haven't been able to obtain a code by then I suggest that they contact either the via the childcare choices, the correct contact should be on there. Maria's got her hand up.
Yeah, Emma, is it all right if I just jump in? We've put it on Facebook a couple of times. Yesterday, the government came up with a fix for this problem with the tax codes, and apparently they're going to be contacting all the parents that have recently renewed their tax-free childcare and are trying to get 2-year-old to with a link so that they can sort out the code in time. I'll put it out on Facebook again tomorrow, but it has literally yesterday a fix came out.
Brilliant,
Okay,
thank you, Maria.
perfect.
That's helpful. I'm just reading Suzanne's question. I'm going to keep going through a slide, and I'll stop at the end of this slide and then answer the questions to that point, and then we'll keep moving through. And clearly there's plenty of time to ask questions, and I will answer as many as I possibly can. And Vicky's here, so she will also answer some in the chat as we go along if required. So okay, so other than those changes, what are we also proposing to do? So in terms of 2-year-olds and that change to entitlement, it is possible, and some local authorities you will have seen have got 2 different rates. So they'll have a different rate for a vulnerable 2-year-old that currently is entitled to funding, and the new entitlement that is coming on board from the 1st of April. We're not proposing, and we are not consulting on having a different rate for 2-year-olds. So when we met with the provider reference group, that was one of the things that I discussed with that group, and it was decided that it should be one rate for all 2-year-olds. So if you feel strongly that that shouldn't have been the case, then we'll have an opportunity to revisit that for 25-26. But for now, it's one rate for all 2-year-olds, which we believe is the right and fair thing to do for 2-year-olds. In relation to supplements, there are a number of supplements that are permitted, which are deprivation, rurality or sparsity, flexibility, quality, or ELA, so English as an additional language. But we must have a mandatory one, which is the deprivation. That's the only one of those others that are permitted that has to be in place. It has to be there for 3- and 4-year-olds. It can be there for the new entitlements, but again, because it comes off the funded rate that's given to you in your base rate, then we are sticking with only having deprivation for 3- and 4-year-olds. Also, given that EYPP has been extended down through the new entitlements and wider, and it's also increased for next year, then we are leaving, the proposals are again just for deprivation for 3- and 4-year-olds and a number of different options. So whilst the supplement is mandatory, the percentage is not mandatory. So currently we take 3.75% of the 3- and 4-year-old rate into the local authority and allocate that as use that as a deprivation pot. In terms of next year, we have decided to consult on 2.5, 3.23 and 3.75. Why 3.23? Because that is as close as we can get to the value of the pot of deprivation that it is currently for 23-24. The impact of that clearly has an impact on what your base hourly rate is. So my plea to you all is to consider all children, not just the children that are in your setting. So deprivation, currently we've got 169 providers in North Somerset. 75 of those providers receive some form of deprivation on top of their base rate. So that is around 44% of providers, and that makes a difference to those providers where they might be in an area where private hours are just not possible for those families, and also the needs of those children are such that they require that additional support and investment in that first 1001 days. So please bear that in mind. You may see that for option 3 and 3.75%, that would be £5.05 that you receive, but somebody else somewhere will be receiving £5.05 plus a deprivation amount. So just have a think about that. Can't force you to choose, but you need to think about what that is. The other thing to be clear about is This means that in table 1, you can see and start to plan for next year what your minimum amount for 3 and 4-year-olds will be. So the minimum amount that you will receive is £5.05. Clearly, it could be £5.07 or £5.12, depending on the option that goes through at the end of the consultation. So I'll pause there and ask and check whether there's any questions about what I have said so far. I think we're safe to go to the next slide, Gail, please. Thank you. So table 2, so hourly rates. So table 2 is showing what has changed over the last financial year and what will start the next financial year off. So obviously in April 23 there wasn't an under 2 rate, but clearly in April 24 there will be, and this is the rate that's into North Somerset before there are any deductions for supplements, top-up funding, etc. The 2-year-old rate, you will see that in April 23 it was £5.98, and then there was the uplift grant announcement that then came into force in September 23, and we passported all of that uplift straight onto yourself. So we didn't top slice anything from that for any additional deprivation, top-up funding, etc. That came out to you. But you'll note for 2-year-olds that the rate into local authorities has actually reduced. So whilst they've now entwined that grant uplift, it's now part of the one rate in for 2-year-olds, it has been reduced by 2p. So that will have an impact on what the 2-year-old funded rate for 24 proposed is. For 3 and 4-year-olds, you can see we've gone from £4.88 into North Somerset to £5.35 to £5.58. And then EYPP has gone from 62p to 68p, and DAF has gone from 828 to 910 from April. Again, DAF is still only allowed to be given by the local authority to one provider, but as providers you can share that with a shared provision if that child is sharing their allocation. Table 3 is therefore the proposed rates for yourselves, and you can see April 24, and you can see that there are 3 options for 3 and 4-year-olds. So clearly that links to the table 1, which shows the options depending on what social deprivation percentage is applied. So it will either be £5.05, £5.07 or £5.12, but you know, and you can plan with £5.05. Okay, and then the annual amounts for 15 hours for any of those variations are there in table 4. Clearly for a 3 and 4-year-old that is entitled to up to 30 hours, you can just times that by 2 to give you something to plan with. Okay. I just check the questions in the chat, Gail. Is that okay?
Of course.
Sarah, I'm confused why. Nine to 20. If Sarah's here, could you please ask me that question, because I may understand it easier than in the written
Sorry,
format.
it's my typing.
No, it's okay.
Okay,
It's
so
not the typing, it's the question itself.
Okay, so I might be being stupid here, but why against April 24 is the 9 month to 2-year-old figure in there when that doesn't actually start until September for 9 months?
Because it's a fair question. So we are planning for the whole financial year. So you need to know what your rate will be for September. So we're doing one consultation now, and that is the amount that we know that we'll be receiving for those children. So does that answer the question?
There should have just been a September column really for the 9 month to 2-year-olds part then, essentially. Is that what you mean? Because it's from September, isn't it?
That's fair, but that's how we get it allocated to us. So it all then follows through. So that's the April announcement to us. But your point is very valid.
Okay, thank you. Just throw me. Thank you.
That's okay. No, you've thrown me, but I've answered, I think. I think I've answered the question in the chat. There's a whole long answer from Vicky on something. So if I've missed something, please do let me know.
Hiya. Can I just double check them? So table 3 is what we are going to get paid after you've taken your amount out.
Correct. But again, for table 3, you need to be mindful of the 3 and 4-year-olds and the social deprivation element that is being consulted on. So £5.05 is what I would be planning on from April the 1st. That's not saying it will be £5.05, but it will not be less than £5.05. I think that answers Erica's question in the chat as well.
So when we're looking at potential new people for, say, 2-year-olds on the 15 hours funding, would get £7.55.
That's correct.
An hourly rate.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we can move to the next slide, Gail, please. Okay, so another thing that's within the consultation that's not a monetary amount but has an impact on yourself. So one of the things that we've been asked a number of times is, could we look at having a different stretched length? So the different stretched length that is being consulted on is 52 weeks. Some of you don't open over 52 weeks, but some of you don't open over 47.5 weeks. You open over 46, 45. Therefore, 52 makes things, should make life easier, is what settings are telling myself. And that for parents and carers, there would be a maximum of 11 or 22 funded hours depending on entitlement, and that would be 11 or 22 if you only open for 46. Your stretch pattern would still be 52, but you'd only claim funding for 46. Then that would be 11 and 22. There wouldn't be multiple stretched offers allowable. It would be the one stretch length of 52 weeks. You can reduce that down, but the set thing within that would be 11 or 22 funded hours. Clearly, you cannot choose to offer less than that as funded hours, but they would be your maximums. Interesting, isn't it? We had a lot of questions about that this morning, but hopefully I've made that clearer in what I've just said. So in terms of the local authority provider agreement, we must have one. Some of you that are eagle-eyed noticed that Appendix D was missing from the consultation. That was rectified at about 10:30 yesterday morning. So then that is available. The whole consultation document was re-uploaded yesterday morning. So those of you that were looking for an interesting read, there is one there for you in the provider agreement if you cannot sleep. It has been much slimmed down. So we have taken the model agreement from the government, but we have made it North Somerset eyes, if that's even a word. So we have taken out the word free, for example. We have changed that to funded, and we have put wherever applicable North Somerset. On the word free stroke funded, you know that we've always supported the word funded, not the word free. But sometimes there's information that's shared on social media or that our comms team receive from central government that they are asked to share publicly and spread that news. That's why they're the comms team. But that has the word free in it, that's not North Somerset's communications, that is the department's, but we will always use the word funded. Okay. Any questions on what I've said so far? If you've got some, you're more than welcome to ask, but if you think about something as we go through the next part, again, there'll be a time at the end to answer further questions. Okay. So special education need inclusion funding, so SENIF stroke top-up funding, we have to have a SENIF fund, and we choose here to also fund any child that's taking funded hours, even for the extended hours at 3 and 4-year-old. It's not mandatory, but we choose that we feel that is the right and fair thing to do. However, over the last few years, the demand on that funding pot has increased. We are funding about 8% of our 2, 3 and 4-year-olds for top-up funding, but the amount of money that is costing us is projected this year to be around £800 or £1,000, and the actual rate is there, so 32,206 is the budget that I'm likely to set for next year. But we need to make sure that we remain in that budget, because if we continue to overspend, then it will have an impact on your base hourly rates in the future. So we need to take some mitigations around that. So there are some, I will go through those options in a moment, but the thing that I've forgotten to mention, of course, is there's some changes to the process. Some of the things that you've heard from Sarah are part of that. They're quite straightforward. They are in the consultation, but if you've got any questions on those, then Karen is on hand, as is Sarah, to answer any questions in relation to process, but I'll continue around rates for now. There are 4 options within the consultation for under 2s, 2-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds. In relation to under 2s, the proposal is to award a top-up fund if the child is entitled to, the parents are entitled to DLA, therefore you would be claiming DAF funding. Now, there is some instances where a child may not be awarded it at such a young age, and it takes a little while for it to come through. In those instances, then Karen or any of her colleagues will have the discretion to award that top-up funding to those children. We're not expecting huge numbers, because we're expecting under about double figures, so about 8 or 9 the government think that we will have in relation to under 2s, for example, entitled to DAF funding. So if we could move to the next slide, Gail, that would be helpful. Thank you. So these are the 4 options for all children of the new entitlements and the existing entitlements. So this is an appendix from the consultation. The first column is the bandings. The data set that has been used, because it's a complete data set, is 22-23. So there's a whole financial year's worth of data that has been used to produce the examples that you've got within the consultation that show what the impact would be if everything remained the same on your individual setting. The second column, which says current, is the current rates. The rates haven't changed for a number of years in terms of the value. So the current rates are the same as 22-23, but you'll see that at the time of producing this, the spend was projected to be 767,000. It's now moved on to over 800,000. Option A shows that the lower rates are the rates that are changed and reduced, protecting those higher bands for those higher level of need children. Option B, again, reduces the lower rates, but then puts in some support through Sirona speech and language. Option C does the same, but it has more Sirona impact. And then option D is a straight £2 off each of the band rates. So none of these choices are easy. In the consultation, it asks you to rank your choices. So if your first choice is, and I'm not going to use the options there so that I'm not considered to be guiding you. So if your first choice was option F, you would be putting a number 1 against that. If your second choice was option, I can't remember my alphabet, J, then that would be where you'd be putting number 2. So hopefully that makes sense. And I will pause again there if you've got any questions for myself or Karen. Thank you, Gail. Please, could you move to the next slide then? Okay, so here are the key dates. So you'll notice that 17th of January was last week. SSF met, consultation went live, and we're now in full consultation period. Consultation will close on the 21st of February at 5 o'clock. And then the draft results of that and the paper for SSF will be released on Wednesday, the 28th of February, a week before SSF meeting. So you will have even clearer guide of what your rates will be and what the implications are in that paper. That it will be publicly published, and we will make sure that you've got a link to see that paper. Then today. Obviously, this is the second one of 2 sessions with yourselves and others. And then, as Gail said at the beginning, there are 2 sessions for questions and answers specifically around the consultation. So if you go away, have a read, and you've got further questions, then that is your opportunity to come and ask on screen on the 5th and also on the 8th of February. And then SSF will meet on the 6th of March. And I've put that you'll know your rates by the 7th, just in case for some reason there's no way to get you that message on the 6th. But we will do our absolute best to make sure that you have that after SSF on the 6th of March. Okay, Sarah's got her hand up.
Sorry, I feel like I'm taking over.
That's okay.
Is the new funding going to be from when they turn 2 or the term after, as is now? Well, for all of the age brackets, so for 2-year-old and 9-month and the existing 3 and 4, is it going to be the term after they turn or when their birthday is?
So it's the term after they turn 9 months to 3 and 4. However, you have to be mindful for under 2s, the change to 2-year-olds, that they also have to have an applicable code as the same as they do for the extended hours for the 3 and 4-year-olds, because they're not universal entitlements.
Right. Okay. Let me get my head. Okay. I see what I think I understand what you mean.
That's okay. Ask again if I've not made that clear.
So you probably have it. It's probably me. So just that bit about the code. So they will still need to get codes for the existing 2-year-olds. You mean? Is that what you mean?
No. So let's take let's take 3 and 4-year-olds as the current live example. So the 15 hours for 3 and 4-year-olds is universal, and that applies from the term after they turn 3 or 4 if they haven't taken any 3-year-old funding. In respect of the extended entitlement for 3 and 4-year-olds, again, it's the term after they turn 3, but the parent or carer must have had a code prior to that term. So if I turn 3 tomorrow, I wish, and my funded entitlement starts on the 1st of April, my universal entitlement for 15 hours would begin on the 1st of April. But if my parents were working and or they were entitled to those extended hours, they would also have to have a code by the 31st of March prior to the 1st of April start. And that code process applies because it's not a universal entitlement to under 2s, the new 2-year-old entitlement, and continues for the 3 and 4 entitlements that are already in place.
Yeah, get it now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, sorry, will that also be for the 9-month-olds? Will they have to get a code?
Yes. So the new entitlement for under 2s, yes. So they'll have to have a code by however many days there are in August, 31 maybe. So yeah.
And again, that will be for the term after they turn 9 months old.
Yes, so if they turn 9 months old again tomorrow, then they can receive a code, but it's a little bit early for them to obtain well, they can probably obtain a code because the system probably allows them to. However, they would need to renew that code within 3 months of the start of September.
Okay, perfect. So this still the time frame of that 3 months. Like,
sorry, Hayley, that was a bit quiet for me. Could you just say that a bit louder for me?
So it's just the same as the other ones, the 2 and the 3. It still turns the term after with a code.
Absolutely, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Have I answered everything in the chat, Vicky?
Sorry, I can't use the chat, but did you manage to get my message today, Emma, about the 9 months from September 25 will be under 5?
No, I didn't, but ask the question.
So on the HTV News yesterday, I noticed it's going to be from all under 5s from September 25.
That's
not 9
correct.
months.
Yeah, so the extension to entitlement continues. The first part of the rollout is this financial year coming, so 24-25, so 2-year-olds from the 1st of April, and then the under 2s from September. And then, although there are planned continued changes to that entitlement, it will of course also be dependent on if there is a change of government, and also a reflection on funding rates and what is actually possible by providers from a sufficiency point of view. So at the moment there are no planned changes to the rollout by the government, but that could of course be subject to change.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I can see another hand. Let me just have a look in the... Sarah, I think that's an old hand, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know how to get rid of it, sorry.
Oh, I think I can put it down politely, so I'm lowering your hand. There we go. Okay, Gail, I think we are done. I don't think I've missed anything in the chat.
Okay. Lovely. And as we've got there, and as Emma said, you know, there are those other sort of mop-up sessions. If it's all too much, we're you know, really understand that it's at the end of a long working day for a number of you. So there are other opportunities, either through email, either by phoning, or coming to those sessions on the evening of the 5th of February, or in the daytime on Thursday the 8th. We will finish the session by thanking you for your time, for always striving to be the best that you can be. As we said at the beginning, you know, these changes are coming at all of us, and, you know, we can either kind of be at each other's throats and kind of, you know, and raging against the system, or we can, you know, work together to try and do what we can, keeping those children at the centre, which you always do. So we appreciate everything that you continue to do to maintain high quality, and for filtering all of this, keeping it from the children, and, you know, making sure that they still have a wonderful EYFS experience. We don't know quite how this is going to pan out, but we do know that it's going to be easier doing it together, coming together, asking questions and working our way forward. You know, we've also got additional colleagues who across other counties, so, you know, everybody is working through this together. So we appreciate your time coming, making sure you're getting clarity. We appreciate your feedback through the sufficiency audit and through the funding consultation. We really do need that to, you know, to make sure that we are making the best decisions possible within our gift as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you for all you continue to do, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.